I was constantly aware of where I was and what I was doing and who I was with. And I think a lot of that comes from, there's really like two places, I guess. And the first is it requires just a little bit of a backstory. When I was really young, I have an older sibling, and they would go out with their friends and they would say, "Oh, I'm going to be here at this time." And my narcissistic parent sometimes would invite me to come along on a drive to drive by wherever it was my siblings said that they were, just to check up and see if they were really there or if they were lying. I feel like they were always trying to catch us in a lie, to catch us sort of being dishonest, because then that kind of all of your actions, everything that you say and do through the eyes of a narcissistic parent is sort of a reflection of who you are, the kind of person that you are. So if you said that you were going to be here at this time, and they show up and you're not in fact there, never once would they consider giving you the benefit of the doubt, where it's like, oh, maybe they were there, but they just went to the store to go and buy a drink and they'll be back. It was automatically like, I'm going to try to catch you in a lie. And if you're not where you say you are, then there are going to be consequences. It was just kind of very black and white. And I think that that's true of narcissists in general. I think they're very sort of black and white, all or nothing thinkers. And I think it was kind of supported as I got older by being told, I have friends everywhere. I know so many people, in the city that we live in. So even when I'm not really here, if I'm not physically present, I'll always know what you're doing, or who you're with or what you're saying. And I think what makes this especially unsettling, I guess, when you're a kid, is there are a handful of times where they would be right, or they would kind of put some work in to do some investigating, and they would be able to kind of throw this really random fact out that you have no idea how they would find out that they would know. And it might have just been pure coincidence, or they might have been completely bluffing, but their bluff turned out to be real or true. And so you sometimes find yourself thinking like, oh, okay, well, I have eyes and ears watching me all the time. And it's exhausting, especially throughout your teenage years when you're in high school and you're starting to maybe develop a little bit of a circle of friends and you're being social. It's hard to feel like all of your interactions are being monitored and you don't know who they're being monitored by. But you know that if you ever slip up or if you say something, not even objectively wrong, but something that maybe your narcissistic parent wouldn't approve of, that there's a possibility that when you go home, you're going to hear about it and you're going to be punished for it. And so it's not only are you always sort of walking on eggshells when you're home, right? And you're existing sort of around your narcissistic parent, but I think they often use that control and that manipulation to make you feel like you have to walk on eggshells even in other environments when they're not present. They want you to feel like they're present even when they're not, to always kind of take them into consideration with all of your thoughts and words and actions. And this even was similar in what I was told by my parent when I was growing up about my phone. I was on my parents' phone plan when I was younger, and I was under the belief for the longest time that because I was on their phone plan, that my parent could see not only just the numbers that I was calling and texting and the timestamps, but the actual content of the messages. I thought that everything that was on my phone was available to my parent because that's what I had been told. And again, there would be times, maybe during an argument, where they would say something, whether they actually took my phone and checked up on it, or if they were just, again, going out on a limb and it turned out to be proven right. It would completely catch you off guard. And they're so convincing. There's a term, I think, called narcissistic rage that I've read briefly about, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And when you imagine a young kid and a parent, right, not only physically is there kind of a big difference in terms of size and stature, which can be intimidating, but if you've got a loud, intimidating parent who's yelling at you, who's telling you all of these things, it's really easy to just feel scared and kind of shrink and completely believe what they're telling you, because you kind of feel like you have to appease them, because anything besides what you're feeling right now when you're being punished or yelled at or shamed for whatever it is that you did or said, it just feels so bad that it's like, okay, I'm going to make sure that this never happens again. And what's really confusing when you're dealing with a narcissistic parent also is that the things that you get punished for or you're made to feel bad for doing or saying, more often than not, are objectively normal. But they're things that trigger your narcissistic parent for whatever reason. And it's something that maybe threatens their ego, or you're taking steps towards independence. You know, I remember when I would bring up the idea of getting a summer job when I was in my early teens. It was always painted in such a negative light. Like, why would I ever want to do that? There's no reason for me to do that. Immediately shut down. And, you know, looking back, it's easy to say like, oh, well, not everyone's parent pays for their phone, so I really don't have anything to complain about. Or, wow, that's great, I don't have to get a summer job over my summer vacation. But hindsight is truly 2020. When I look back, not only were they lying about what they had access to on my phone just to scare me and to always kind of keep me on edge, to maintain this idea that they had so much more control than they actually did, which sort of put them in a position of power in my eyes, right, in all of their children's lives. But I think they were also kind of forcing dependency, again, where it's easy to view it as a good thing when you're a kid, but looking back, that means that I don't have my own money. I have less opportunities to get outside of the house and socialize and develop my personality outside of my immediate family. Maybe if I do make friends with my coworkers, then I'll be out of the house even more, and I'll be able to make my own decisions because I have my own money and I don't have to go to my parent to ask them for everything always. It's very, very convoluted, and it's exhausting. I think more than anything else, to feel like everything that you ever say or do, or even think sometimes, is being monitored and scrutinized. And if you ever slip up even once, again, for doing something that is objectively normal, that you might not even know your parent thinks is wrong, or something that might trigger them, to feel like you always have to be aware of everything is just entirely exhausting. It leads you, I know for me, it made me make decisions to voluntarily miss out on certain experiences. It affected who I talked to and who I didn't talk to. It absolutely had what I would consider to be a negative impact on not only my personal development, but also my social development. I think you have to, especially as a kid, even going throughout your teens, you have to be given the opportunity to make mistakes sometimes and to learn from them. And, you know, looking back for most of my life, I can't pinpoint really many mistakes that I made. And not to say that because I'm perfect and I never did anything wrong, but it was because I was always so hyper aware of the fact that maybe I was being watched or listened to. And I have to weigh my options before I do or say anything, because there's a possibility that I'm not the only one who's going to know about this, or even the people that I see are going to be the only people that know about this. And so I would never really put myself in a position to make a mistake or in a compromising position, because I was always thinking that many steps ahead, really out of fear. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. You know, I am not a professional. I don't claim to be one, but a therapist once told me that I am an expert in my own experience. And I want to speak about these topics candidly so that anyone who has experienced or is currently experiencing something like it knows a little bit more about what to expect, how to respond, and that you're not alone.